The alarm screamed through the orbital station, and Daewon knew immediately that something had gone wrong. Again. He pushed himself away from his desk and floated through the zero-gravity corridor toward the observation deck. His coffee spiraled behind him, forgotten. When he reached the viewing window, Hana was already there. Her face reflected red in the glass, not from station lights, from space itself. The crimson veil had moved closer. Much closer than their models predicted. How long? Daewon asked quietly. Hana didn't turn around. 11 weeks. Maybe 12 if we're lucky. They both knew luck had nothing to do with it anymore. The veil had been spreading through their solar system for 8 months now. It looked beautiful from a distance, like ribbons of red silk flowing between the stars. But everywhere it touched, everything died. Plants withered in seconds. Animals collapsed without a sound. Humans simply stopped breathing. The colonies on Mars went silent first. Then the mining stations on the asteroids. Then the research outpost on Europa. Each time the pattern was the same. A red glow in the sky. Then silence. Then nothing. Earth was next. Daewon had spent his entire career studying the stars. He loved the universe and all its mysteries. But this mystery was killing them, and nothing they tried could stop it. They fired missiles at the veil. The red mist simply flowed around them. They tried to create electromagnetic barriers. The veil passed through like they weren't even there. They attempted to use nuclear explosions to push it back. The veil absorbed the energy and grew brighter. The evacuation ships? Daewon asked, though he already knew the answer. Not enough. Not even close. Hana's voice was flat. We can maybe save 2 million people. There are 9 billion on Earth. Down on the planet below them, people were rioting. Governments had collapsed. Some people prayed. Some people fought. Some people just held their families and waited. Daewon's own daughter was down there somewhere. She had refused to leave. Said she wanted to stay with her students at the university. She was only 28. Too young to die. Everyone was too young to die. Taemin arrived on the observation deck an hour later. The military commander looked like he hadn't slept in days. He probably hadn't. His uniform was wrinkled and his eyes were red. The fleet is ready, Taemin said, for whatever good it'll do. We can't shoot radiation. We can't punch mist. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Humanity conquered diseases. We stopped wars. We reached the stars. And we're going to die from a cloud we don't even understand. Daewon wanted to say something hopeful, something about human resilience or never giving up. But the words died in his throat. What was the point of lying now? That's when the sensors started screaming again. New contact, someone shouted from the control station. Something just appeared at the edge of the system. Daewon rushed to the displays. His heart pounded. Please, he thought. Please let it be something we can use. Some asteroid we can mine for materials. Some phenomenon we missed, anything. But it wasn't an asteroid, it was a ship. Alien, impossibly large. And it was moving toward them faster than anything humanity had ever built. The communications array exploded with activity. Every government on Earth was suddenly calling them. Every military base wanted information. The evacuation ships stopped loading and waited. Everyone was waiting. The alien vessel slowed as it approached Earth. Up close, it didn't look like metal or any material Daewon recognized. It seemed to be made of light itself, crystalline structures that pulsed with colors he had no names for. It was beautiful, terrifying, impossible. Then it spoke, not with radio waves or any technology they understood. The voice simply appeared in everyone's mind at once. Every human being on Earth and in orbit heard it simultaneously. It felt warm like sunlight on skin, but also sad, infinitely sad. We are the Veltari, the voice said. We have seen your dying light. We understand your fear. We were once where you are now. Hope flared in Daewon's chest, painful and desperate. Can you stop it? He asked aloud, knowing somehow that they would hear him. Can you save us? The pause felt like forever. We can, the voice replied. But the cost is everything we are, the Veltari explained, and their words broke Daewon's heart. They were beings of pure energy, crystalline consciousness that lived in the spaces between atoms. They had been exploring the galaxy for millions of years, never interfering, only observing. But they had watched humanity for centuries. They found humans fascinating, violent and gentle, cruel and kind, short-lived but dreaming of eternity. The crimson veil was ancient cosmic radiation, older than most stars. The Veltari could stop it. They could create a shield by using their own life force, their very essence, to build a barrier the veil couldn't cross. But doing so would extinguish them. All of them. Their entire species would burn out like candles, leaving nothing behind. Why? Taman asked the question they were all thinking.
Why would you do this for us?
Because we have lived long enough to know what matters, the Veltari answered. And because your species, for all its flaws, has something we have lost. You hope, you fight. You love fiercely even when death watches you. That is worth preserving. That is worth everything. The debate that followed was agonizing. World leaders argued. Religious figures prayed for guidance. Philosophers wrestled with the morality. Could humanity accept salvation bought with genocide? Could they let an entire species die for them? But the Veltari had already decided. 3 days later, their ship moved into position between Earth and the approaching veil. Daewon watched from the station as the Veltari vessel began to glow. Brighter and brighter until it hurt to look at directly. The light spread outward in a sphere, growing and expanding. Inside that light he could see shapes. Thousands of them. The individual Veltari, each one a point of consciousness, each one choosing to end. The crimson veil hit the barrier. For a moment nothing happened. Then the veil began to slow, to stop, to push back against the shield. The light from the Veltari ship grew even brighter. Daewon could feel heat through the station walls. It took 6 hours. 6 hours of the Veltari burning themselves away to save a species they barely knew. When it was over, the crimson veil had been pushed back beyond the solar system, held at bay by a shimmering wall of crystalline energy that now surrounded Earth like a second atmosphere. The alien ship was gone. The Veltari were gone. An entire civilization had simply ceased to exist, except for one. When the rescue teams reached the coordinates where the ship had been, they found a single crystal pod floating in space. Inside, one Veltari remained in stasis. Barely alive, sleeping, dreaming maybe. They brought the pod back to the station. Hana scanned it with every instrument they had. "This one is different," she said softly. "Older, more complex. I think she's their keeper, the one who holds all their memories." Daewon stood before the crystal pod and felt tears on his face. Inside, he could see the faint glow of the last Veltari. She had stayed behind while her people died, perhaps to witness, perhaps to remember. "We owe them everything," he whispered. "Everything we are, everything we'll ever be. How do we repay a debt like that?" Taman put a hand on his shoulder. "I don't know. But we have to try. For as long as humanity exists, we have to try." Below them, Earth continued to spin. 9 billion people alive who should have been dead, saved by strangers who became nothing more than memory and light, and one small crystal that glowed faintly in the darkness, carrying the dreams of the dead. 27 years had passed since the Veltari died for them, and Jiwon still felt the weight of it every single day. She pressed her hand against the crystal pod and closed her eyes, reaching out with her mind the way she had learned to do over years of practice. "Hello, Rinsha," she whispered. "It's me again." The response came like a gentle wave washing over her thoughts. Warm, welcoming, sad, little Jiwon. "Still visiting an old memory?" "You're not just a memory," Jiwon said firmly. "You're alive. And we're going to bring your people back." The feeling that came back was like a soft laugh, disbelieving but kind. "My dear child, we are gone. Accept this. Live your life. Be happy for us." But Jiwon had never been good at accepting things. Her father used to say she inherited his stubbornness. Daewon had died 3 years ago, still working on understanding Veltari technology, still trying to find a way to undo what had been done. Jiwon had made him a promise at his deathbed. She would finish what he started. The memorial station had grown over the decades. What started as a simple platform to house the crystal pod had become a massive research facility. Hundreds of scientists worked here now, all of them dedicated to one impossible goal: bring back the Veltari. Kyung found her in the meditation chamber an hour later. The engineer was carrying data tablets and wearing the excited expression that meant he had discovered something new. "We have confirmation," Kyung said, barely containing himself. "The FTL drive works. We tested it at the edge of the system. We can travel faster than light now." Jiwon felt her heart race. "How much faster?" 10 times light speed, maybe more once we refine it. Kyung pulled up holographic displays. "And you know the best part? We based the entire design on energy signatures from the Veltari shield. They gave us this technology without even knowing it. Their sacrifice is still giving us gifts. It felt wrong somehow, profiting from their deaths. But Jiwan knew the Veltari wouldn't see it that way. They had valued knowledge and growth above everything. They would have been happy that their end led to human advancement. This changes everything, Jiwan said slowly. If we can travel that fast, we can search the galaxy. We can look for the memory echoes Rinsha told me about. You really think they exist? Kyung asked carefully. He didn't doubt her, but like many people, he struggled to believe something so important could rest on dreams and telepathic whispers. I know they do. Jiwan pulled up her own records. Years of conversations with the sleeping Veltari. Fragments of thoughts. Pieces of memories. The Veltari didn't just die, Kyung. They burned away, but energy doesn't disappear. It transforms. Rinsha says their consciousness left echoes throughout the galaxy. Places they visited, stars they studied, worlds they observed, little fragments of what they were, still existing in the fabric of space itself. Minho joined them, carrying his ever-present recording equipment. The historian had been documenting everything since the day the Veltari saved them. He said future generations needed to know the truth. All of it. The council approved the mission, Minho announced. They're building 10 ships. Each one equipped with the new FTL drives and echo detection arrays. You're leading the project, Jiwan. She felt dizzy. 10 ships. After decades of struggling for funding and support, the governments of Earth were finally committing everything to this goal. The Great Search, people were calling it. Humanity's quest to resurrect gods, except the Veltari weren't gods. They were just people. Strange, ancient, impossible people made of light and thought. But people nonetheless. And they had saved humanity not because they had to, but because they wanted to. That was what mattered. The first ship launched 6 months later. Jiwan named it Promise because that's what this was. A promise that the Veltari sacrifice would not be the end of their story. She stood on the memorial station and watched the vessel disappear into faster-than-light space, leaving a ripple of distorted starlight behind. 7 more ships would follow over the next year, each one carrying the best scientists humanity could provide, each one searching for ghosts. That night, Jiwan sat beside the crystal pod and reached out to Rinsha again. The connection came easier now. After so many years, they had learned each other's rhythms of thought. They're looking for your people, Jiwan said. We're going to find every echo, every fragment, every piece of consciousness that still exists, and we're going to bring them back. The response was gentle, but filled with an emotion Jiwan had learned to recognize as Veltari grief. You cannot bring back the dead, little one. Even we could not do that. Watch us, Jiwan replied. You don't understand humans yet, Rinsha. We're stubborn, we're foolish, we attempt impossible things because we don't know any better. You saved all of us. 9 billion people are alive because of you. Do you really think we're just going to shrug and move on? Do you think we're going to let you stay dead? What you're attempting could take lifetimes. Then it takes lifetimes, Jiwan said simply. We have time now. You gave us time. We'll use it to give you life. Over the following years, reports started coming back from the search vessels. Captain Siak of the Promise found the first echo in a nebula 300 light-years from Earth. It was small, barely detectable. A whisper of consciousness clinging to dust particles. But it was real. It was proof. The second echo was found orbiting a dying star. The third in an asteroid field. The fourth near a black hole. Each one was carefully harvested, stored in special containment fields that Kyung designed based on Veltari technology. Each one was a piece of a massive puzzle that humanity was determined to solve. Other alien species started noticing. Humanity had burst onto the galactic stage with their new FTL drives. But instead of conquering or colonizing, they were hunting for ghosts. It confused most aliens. Some thought humans were insane. Some thought it was a trick, some hidden military agenda. But as years became decades and the search continued without pause, understanding began to dawn. Humanity was serious. They were actually trying to resurrect an extinct species, not for profit, not for power. Just because they owed them, Jiwan aged. Her hair turned gray, then white. Her hands developed arthritis that made working difficult. But she never stopped. Every day she reviewed new echo discoveries. Every night she communed with Rinsha, sharing what they had found, explaining what they were building. And slowly, impossibly, Rinsha began to hope. You're really going to do this, the Veltari said one evening. And for the first time, it wasn't a question. Yes, Ji-won replied. I don't know how yet. I don't know if we'll succeed. But we're going to try until there's no try left in us. That's what humans do. We fail upward. We stumble toward impossible goals, and sometimes, just sometimes, we actually reach them. Why? Rinsha asked. The question she had been holding back for decades. Why does this matter so much to you? You never knew us. We were strangers who happened to save you. You could honor our memory and live your lives. Why do you need to bring us back? Ji-won smiled even though Rinsha couldn't see it. Because you didn't have to save us either. You were strangers who happened to care. Because my father spent his last years working on this and his sacrifice should mean something. Because 9 billion people owe you their existence, and that's a debt that can't be paid with memorials and ceremonies. And because, she paused, searching for the right words. Because I've spent 27 years talking to you, Rinsha. You're my friend, and I'm not letting my friend stay dead if there's any possible way to change it. The emotion that flowed back was overwhelming. Veltari didn't cry, but if they could have, Ji-won thought Rinsha would be weeping. You beautiful, stubborn, impossible creatures, Rinsha whispered across their connection. You're going to do it, aren't you? You're actually going to bring us back. Yes, Ji-won said with absolute certainty, even if it takes 100 years. Even if it costs us everything. You gave us tomorrow. We're giving you eternity. Above the memorial station, the stars shone bright and clear, protected by the shield the Veltari had died to create. And somewhere out there in the darkness, 8 human ships continued their search, hunting for fragments of light that had once been people. The great search had begun, and humanity would not rest until it was complete. Captain Siak stared at the scanner readings and allowed himself a small smile. After 3 months of searching this sector, they had finally found another echo. The 47th overall, each one precious, each one bringing them closer to the impossible goal. Yuna, can you confirm? He asked his science officer. Yuna was already working, her fingers dancing across holographic controls. She was young, only 34, but brilliant. Her specialty was energy manipulation, and she had developed half the equipment they used to detect and capture the echoes. Confirmed, she said, excitement creeping into her professional tone. It's strong, Captain. One of the strongest we've found. The Veltari must have spent significant time in this system. Siak activated the ship-wide communication. All hands prepare for echo collection. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. The Promise had been searching for 16 years now. Siak had been captain for 12 of those years, taking over when the original commander retired. Most of his crew had been born after the Veltari sacrifice. They knew the story from history lessons and memorials, not from memory. But they believed in the mission just as strongly as those who had witnessed it. The collection process was delicate. Veltari echoes were fragments of consciousness, energy patterns that maintained coherence against all odds. But they were fragile. One wrong move and they would dissipate, lost forever. Yuna guided the process personally, using custom-built containment fields to gently draw the echo toward their ship. It took 4 hours of careful work. When it was finally secure in their storage matrix, the entire crew celebrated. 47 echoes. Only 800 more to go, probably more. Ji-won's calculations suggested they needed at least 1,000 echoes to have enough consciousness fragments to resurrect the Veltari species. Maybe as many as 1,500. The number was staggering, but humanity had never been good at accepting defeat. Message from Earth, the communications officer called out. Personal for you, Captain. Siak retreated to his quarters and opened the message. Ji-won's aged face appeared on the screen. She looked tired, more tired than last time, but her eyes still burned with determination. Captain Siak, her recorded message began. I hope this finds you well. I'm sending updated search coordinates based on new information from Rinsha. She's been sharing more memories, though each one seems to cost her energy. I worry about her, but she insists on helping. Ji-won paused, and Siak saw her swallow hard. I need to tell you something. The doctors say I have maybe 5 years left, some illness they can't fix. I'm not afraid of dying. I've lived long enough to see this project become real. But I need to know we're making progress fast enough. Can we find the remaining echoes in 5 years? Can we begin resurrection attempts before I'm gone? The message ended with Ji-won's sad smile. Keep searching, Captain. Keep bringing them home. For my father. For the Veltari. For all of us. Silk sat in silence for a long moment. Then he called Yuna to his quarters and showed her the message. "We need to speed up," he said quietly. "We need to find more echoes, faster." Yuna nodded slowly. "I might have an idea." "It's risky. But if it works, we could detect echoes from much greater distances." They spent the next month refining Yuna's idea. She proposed using the ship's FTL drive in a completely new way, creating a pulse that would resonate with Veltari energy signatures across multiple light years. It could damage their ship. It could even create a beacon that hostile aliens might detect, but it would multiply their search efficiency by a factor of 10. "Do it," Siak ordered. The pulse worked. Suddenly, they were finding echoes at an incredible rate. 2 in 1 week. 5 in a month. The other search ships heard about the technique and implemented it on their vessels. The collection rate exploded, but it came with consequences. The Drath Collective noticed. The Drath were an empire of aggressive reptilian beings who controlled 40 star systems through military might. They had been watching humanity's expansion with growing irritation. Humans were spreading across the galaxy, but they weren't conquering. They weren't establishing colonies. They were just searching. Always searching. The Drath found it confusing and suspicious. When the Drath flagship intercepted the promise, Siak knew they were in trouble. "Human vessel," the Drath commander's voice crackled over communications. "You will explain your activities in this sector. You will explain why you are creating energy pulses that disturb our territory, and you will do so immediately or be destroyed." Siak took a deep breath. Humanity had avoided conflict with other species for decades. Their only goal was the search. But he couldn't let the Drath destroy his ship, not when they were so close. "We are searching for echoes," Sok explained calmly. "Fragments of consciousness from a species called the Veltari. They saved humanity from extinction 50 years ago. We are trying to bring them back." The silence on the other end lasted so long that Siak thought the connection had been lost. Then the Drath commander spoke again, and his voice was filled with contempt. "You are searching for dead beings? You have spent decades on this foolishness? You are weak, pathetic. The Drath do not waste resources on the dead. The dead serve no purpose." "The Veltari serve the purpose of saving 9 billion lives," Siak replied, keeping his voice steady. "We owe them a debt. We will repay it." "Debt to the dead is meaningless," the Drath commander snarled. "You will cease these activities and leave Drath space, or you will join your precious Veltari in extinction." The communication cut off. The Drath ship powered up weapons. What the Drath commander didn't know was that the promise wasn't alone. 3 other human search vessels were in the nearby systems, and they had heard every word of the conversation. The Drath ship fired first, but it never landed a shot. Humanity had spent 50 years focused on one goal, but that didn't mean they had neglected defense. The Promise's shields absorbed the blast easily, and then 3 more human ships appeared from FTL, surrounding the Drath vessel. "This is Captain Siak of Earth," he said coldly. "You threatened to destroy a vessel engaged in a mission of resurrection and mercy. You called us weak for honoring our debts. You understand nothing about humanity. The human ships didn't destroy the Drath vessel. They disabled it. Left it drifting in space with functioning life support but no weapons or engines. A rescue beacon was activated so other Drath ships could find their people. Tell your empire this," Siak said to the stranded Drath. "Humanity does not start fights. We are not conquerors. We are searching for fragments of light because we owe a debt that can never be fully repaid. But if anyone tries to stop us, if anyone threatens our mission to bring back those who saved us, they will learn that humans can be very dangerous when protecting what we love." Word of the encounter spread across the galaxy. The Drath had been humiliated. Other species began to understand that humanity wasn't weak. They were focused. There was a difference. But more importantly, other species began to understand the depth of human determination. Some aliens started calling humans the devoted ones. Others called them the stubborn children. A few philosophical species began to study humanity, fascinated by a civilization that would spend a century trying to resurrect their saviors. Years continued to pass. The echo count climbed. 100, 200, 500. Jiwan's health declined, but she refused to give up. She spent every day coordinating the search efforts, analyzing echoes, and communing with Rinsha. "We're close," Jiwan told the sleeping Veltari during one of their nightly conversations. "Captain Siak found 3 more echoes today. We're at 743 now. Just a few more years." "You're dying," Rinsha said gently. "I can feel it through our connection. Your life force is fading. I know, Ji-won admitted, but I'll last long enough, I have to. I need to see you and your people alive again. I need to know that all of this meant something. It already means something, Rinsha assured her. Regardless of whether you succeed in resurrection, what humanity has done is unprecedented. You have shown the galaxy that some species value honor over survival, that some beings will spend lifetimes repaying debts that no one demanded. That is more valuable than you know. It's not enough, Ji-won said stubbornly. We didn't do all this to make a point to other aliens. We did it because you deserve to live. Because every single Veltari who burned themselves away to save us deserves another chance. Because friendship and gratitude aren't just words to us. They're everything. My beautiful, impossible humans, Rinsha whispered. What did we do to deserve you? You saved us, Ji-won replied simply. And now we save you. That's how it works. 4 more years passed. The echo count reached 847. Ji-won was now bedridden, but she still coordinated the project from her medical station. Her protege, a young quantum biologist named Hai-il, handled most of the daily operations now. We need to begin resurrection attempts, Hai-il told Ji-won one evening. We have enough echoes. We understand the process. We've built the facility. It's time. Ji-won looked at the young man who had become like a son to her. I'm going to die soon, Hai-il. Maybe before we succeed. Maybe during the attempt. You need to be ready to continue without me. You'll make it, Hale said firmly. You're too stubborn to die before seeing this through. Ji-won laughed weakly. The resurrection facility hung in deep space far from any star system. It had taken 8 years to build, and it was the most complex structure humanity had ever created. At its heart was a harvested neutron star, contained within layers of shielding that would make most engineers weep with envy. The power output was staggering. It had to be. They were attempting to bring the dead back to life. Ji-won floated in her medical pod near the observation deck, kept alive by machines and sheer force of will. She was 62 years old and looked 80. The illness had ravaged her body, but her mind remained sharp. She refused to die, not yet, not when they were this close. Hai-il worked beside her, reviewing the final calculations for the 100th time. He was 29 now, and he had spent his entire adult life on this project. He knew more about Veltari energy patterns than anyone alive except Ji-won herself. The bioenergy matrix is ready, he reported. We've tested it 1,000 times with simulated echoes. The theory is sound. Theory, Ji-won said weakly, is never the same as reality. Somin, the energy architect, joined them. She was 41 and had designed the containment systems that would hold Veltari consciousness during the resurrection process. All 847 echoes are loaded into the buffer. The neutron star is stable. We can begin whenever you give the word. Ji-won looked at them both. Then she looked at the crystal pod that held Rinsha. The Veltari had been brought to the facility for the resurrection attempt. After 93 years of sleep, she would finally wake. One way or another. Wake her first, Ji-won said. She needs to guide us through this. She knows her people better than we ever could. Hai-il had developed a process for waking Rinsha from stasis. It took 6 hours of careful energy adjustment. Ji-won stayed conscious through all of it, fighting her failing body, refusing to miss this moment. When Rinsha finally opened her eyes, the crystal pod filled with brilliant light. For the first time in nearly a century, a Veltari was fully awake. Ji-won. Rinsha's voice echoed in everyone's minds. Not just Ji-won this time. Everyone in the facility could hear her, feel her. You're dying. Not yet, Ji-won replied, and even her mental voice sounded tired. First, we bring your people back. Then I can rest. Rinsha emerged from the crystal pod, her form stabilizing into something almost physical. She looked like a woman made of starlight, constantly shifting between solid and transparent, beautiful and impossible. You really did it, Rinsha said, looking around at the facility. You spent a century preparing to resurrect us. Why would you go this far? Because you went all the way for us, Ji-won answered. Because 847 Veltari burned themselves into extinction to save people they barely knew. Because we're human, and we don't know how to let go of debts. Because I promised you I would do this, and I keep my promises. Rinsha moved closer to Ji-won's medical pod. I can feel your life force fading. Hours, maybe. Not even a full day. Then we better hurry, Ji-won said with a weak smile. They moved to the central chamber. The resurrection matrix was enormous, a spherical structure 50 meters across. filled with quantum processors and energy conduits that glowed with captured light from the neutron star. The 847 echoes waited in containment fields, each one a fragment of consciousness that had survived impossible odds. Rinsha studied the matrix for a long time. Then she turned to Hayil. This might work. It might actually work. You've created a space where consciousness can be reconstituted, where energy can be given form and memory again. It's brilliant. Insane, but brilliant. Will you help us? Hayil asked. Of course, Rinsha said. I didn't survive 93 years of sleep to miss my people's resurrection. Show me what you need. The process was complex. The echoes had to be carefully aligned, their energy patterns synchronized. Rinsha's knowledge was crucial. She could feel the echoes in ways humans couldn't. She knew which fragments belonged together, which pieces of consciousness could merge properly. Representatives from dozens of alien species had gathered to witness the attempt. Some came out of curiosity, some came out of respect, some came because they didn't believe it was possible and wanted to see humanity fail, but they all came. Among them were even some Drath, the species that had threatened humanity's search vessels years ago. They stood silently at the observation windows watching. Beginning power transfer, Soman announced. Neutron star output increasing to 20%. The matrix began to glow. Energy flowed from the neutron star through carefully designed conduits into the central chamber. The echoes started responding, their light brightening as power reached them. Alignment holding steady. Hayil reported. All echoes stable. Rinsha, are you ready? I am, the Veltari replied. Beginning consciousness integration. Rinsha moved into the center of the matrix. Her own energy field expanded, touching each echo, connecting them, helping them remember what they once were. It was like watching a conductor lead an orchestra, except the music was light and the instruments were fragments of souls. The process continued for 3 hours. Ji-won watched from her medical pod, fighting to stay conscious. She could feel her body shutting down. Her heart was struggling. Her lungs were failing, but she held on. Just a little longer. Power at 60%, Salman called out. The matrix is stable. The echoes are merging. It's working. It's actually working. Then something went wrong. The energy feedback started small, a fluctuation in one of the containment fields, but it cascaded quickly. The neutron star's output spiked. The matrix began overloading. Red warning lights filled the facility. Shutdown protocols failing. Someone shouted. The matrix is going to collapse. We're going to lose all the echoes. Hayil worked frantically at the controls. I can't stabilize it. The feedback loop is too strong. G1 understood immediately what was happening. The echoes were trying to reconstitute, but they needed a bridge. Something to anchor them during the transformation from fragments to whole beings. Rinsha was providing part of that bridge, but it wasn't enough. They needed more. They needed a consciousness that understood both human technology and Veltari nature. They needed someone willing to become that bridge. Disconnect my medical pod, G1 said clearly. What? Ail turned to her in horror. No, you'll die. I'm dying anyway, G1 replied. And this is what I was meant to do. My whole life led to this moment. Let me finish it, G1, no. Rinsha's mental voice was filled with anguish. Not like this. Exactly like this, G1 said firmly. Your people died to save us. Now I die to save you. That's fair. That's right. That's what friends do for each other. Before anyone could stop her, G1 activated the emergency release on her medical pod. The machines keeping her alive shut down. She felt her body begin to fail immediately. But she didn't need her body anymore. She reached out with her mind the way she had done thousands of times over 93 years of communing with Rinsha. But this time she reached further, deeper. She found the matrix, found the echoes, found the space between life and death where the Veltari existed, and she became the bridge. Her consciousness spread through the matrix, connecting with every echo. She felt the Veltari fragments recognize her, the human who had spent her life trying to bring them home. They trusted her. They followed her. They used her dying neural patterns as a template, as a guide back to existence. Ji-won felt her body die, felt her heart stop, felt her lungs take their last breath, but her consciousness remained just long enough to finish the work. The matrix flared with brilliant light. Energy stabilized. The echoes merged and grew and became whole again. 847 Veltari consciousness patterns reconstituted, drawing on the power of a neutron star and guided by a dying human's love. When the light faded, they were there. 847 beings made of crystalline energy, standing in the resurrection chamber, alive, whole, confused and amazed and overwhelmed, and Rinsha stood among them, weeping tears of light. Because her people had returned, because Jiwan had given everything to make it happen, because the debt had been paid in the most profound way possible. Hail stared at Jiwan's body in the medical pod. She looked peaceful, gone, but her sacrifice had worked. The Veltari were alive. The alien observers stood in stunned silence. What they had witnessed was impossible. It violated every known law about consciousness and death. But it had happened. Humanity had brought back an extinct species through nothing but determination, technology, and ultimate sacrifice. The Drath representatives were the first to speak. Their commander, the same one who had called humans weak years ago, stepped forward. "We were wrong about you," he said quietly. "The Drath pride themselves on strength, but we have never seen strength like this. To spend a century repaying a debt. To sacrifice your own life to resurrect another species. This is power beyond weapons. This is power beyond conquest." Rinsha approached the medical pod and gently touched Jiwan's forehead. "Thank you, my friend. Thank you for everything. Rest now. Your work is complete. You brought us home." Around the facility, the resurrected Veltari began to understand what had happened. They had died saving humanity, and humanity had spent nearly a century bringing them back. The magnitude of it was overwhelming. 40 years had passed since the resurrection, and Hail still thought about Jiwan every single day. He was 68 now, his hair completely white, his body slow with age. But his mind remained sharp. It had to. He was the ambassador to the Veltari, the bridge between two species that had become closer than anyone thought possible. He stood on the observation deck of the Joint Research Station, watching as human and Veltari scientists worked together on a new project. The sight still filled him with wonder, even after 4 decades. Rinsha found him there, as she often did. The Veltari leader glowed softly in the dim light, her form more solid now than it had been in those early years after resurrection. The Veltari had been weak at first, taking years to fully recover their abilities. Humanity had protected them, nurtured them, reversed the historic roles. The two species had become like siblings. "You're thinking about her again," Rinsha said gently. "Always," Hail admitted. "She should be here to see this. She should see what her sacrifice created." "She sees," Rinsha assured him. "Energy never truly dies, Hail. It transforms. Somewhere in the universe, the consciousness that was Jiwan continues. And I think she's proud." A young woman approached them. Bitna was only 24, a historian like Minho had been before her. She was writing a comprehensive chronicle of everything that had happened since the Veltari first saved humanity. It would be the most complete historical record ever assembled. "Ambassador Hail," Bitna said respectfully, "I need to ask you something for my chronicle. Something that's been bothering me." "Ask," Hail encouraged. "Why did you do it?" Bitna looked between Hail and Rinsha. "I've studied the records, I've interviewed thousands of people, but I still don't understand. Why did humanity spend a century on this? We could have just mourned the Veltari and moved on. We could have used those resources for ourselves. Why did we dedicate everything to bringing back a species we barely knew?" Hail smiled. It was a question he had been asked many times over the decades, and his answer never changed. "Because they saved us when they didn't have to," he said simply. "Because 9 billion people owed their lives to strangers. Because we're human, and we don't know how to leave debts unpaid. Because some things matter more than survival or profit. Because it was the right thing to do." "But it cost so much," Bitna pressed. "Resources, time, lives. Jiwan died making it happen. Was it worth it?" Rinsha answered before Hail could. "Ask the galaxy that question. Look at what has changed because of what your species did." And it was true. Everything had changed. The story of humanity's quest had spread across every star system. Every alien civilization knew about the species that spent a century resurrecting their saviors. It had become legend, myth, proof that some beings valued honor over everything else. Other species that had once viewed humanity as primitive now saw them differently. The Veltari had shared their advanced technology freely, teaching humans to manipulate consciousness and energy in ways that seemed like magic. But more importantly, they had shared their philosophy, their understanding of existence. Together, humans and Veltari had established something new. The Covenant of Tomorrow, they called it. An alliance not based on military might or economic advantage, but on mutual sacrifice and support. Dozens of species had joined over the decades. Even the Drath, humbled by what they had witnessed. Captain Taiyang commanded one of the joint exploration vessels now. He was 35, born after the resurrection, but he had grown up on stories of the Great Search. His crew was half human, half Veltari, working together seamlessly. Ambassador, Taiyang's message came through the communication system. We've found something, a species in trouble. They're facing extinction from a solar flare event. We're too far away to help quickly. We need support. He-Il felt his heart race. How long do they have? 6 months, maybe less. Without hesitation, He-Il activated the Covenant emergency protocols. Within hours, 20 ships from a dozen different species were racing toward the endangered civilization. Humans, Veltari, Drath, and others working together. Because that's what the Covenant did. They saved people. They paid forward the debt that humanity had received. Bitna watched the response unfold. "This is what you created," she said in awe. "A galaxy that helps instead of conquers." "Not just us," He-Il corrected. "The Veltari started it by saving humanity. We continued it by saving them. Now everyone continues it by saving whoever needs help. That's the legacy." Late that night, He-Il sat alone in his quarters, reviewing old records. He found files from Jiwan's final years, messages she had recorded, thoughts she had documented, and he found something he had never seen before. A sealed message addressed to him personally, to be opened 40 years after her death. His hands shook as he activated it. Jiwan's aged face appeared on the screen. This message had been recorded just days before the resurrection attempt. "Hello, He-Il," she said warmly. "If you're watching this, it means I succeeded. It means the Veltari are alive. I hope you're taking care of them. I hope they're taking care of you." She paused, and He-Il saw tears in her eyes. "I need to tell you something. A secret I've carried for years. Rincha told me the truth about the Crimson Veil. It wasn't a natural phenomenon. It was an ancient weapon, dormant for millions of years. And the Veltari accidentally activated it when they were exploring our region of space. They triggered the very thing that would destroy us." He-Il felt his breath catch. The Veltari had caused the extinction event? They didn't know. Jiwan continued. It was a complete accident. But when they realized what they had done, they didn't run. They didn't try to fix it and fail. They sacrificed themselves to stop it. They saved us from a catastrophe they had inadvertently created. And they never told us the truth. Jiwan leaned closer to the camera. "When I discovered this, I was angry at first. Then I understood. It didn't matter why they saved us. It only mattered that they did. They could have fled. They could have let us die and carried their guilt silently. Instead, they gave everything to make it right. That's who they were. That's why they deserve to be brought back." She smiled, the same stubborn smile He-Il remembered so well. "I'm telling you this, so you can decide what to do with the information. You can tell the galaxy the truth or you can keep it secret. Either way, remember this. The Veltari made a mistake and paid for it with their entire civilization. We brought them back not because they were perfect, but because they showed us that redemption is possible. That mistakes can be faced with courage, that the right thing to do sometimes costs everything." The message ended with Jiwan's final words. "Live well, He-Il. Honor the sacrifice. and never stop believing that impossible things can be achieved through love and determination. The Veltari taught us that. We taught them that. Now teach it to the galaxy. Hail sat in silence for a long time. Then he encrypted the message and locked it away. Jiwan was right. The truth didn't matter. What mattered was what had been built from it. What mattered was the galaxy they now lived in, where species helped each other instead of conquering, where debts were paid even when they didn't have to be. Years continued to pass. Hail aged. His health began to fail, the way all humans eventually did. The Veltari tried to use their technology to extend his life, but he refused. "I've lived long enough," he told Rinsha. "I've seen miracles. I've watched impossible things become real. I've helped build a galaxy worth living in. That's more than enough." On his final day, Hail lay in a comfortable bed on the memorial station, the same place where Jiwan had spent years communing with the sleeping Rinsha. The circle was closing. It felt right. Rinsha came to him, and with her came hundreds of Veltari. They filled the room with their gentle light, and they sang. The Veltari had a way of singing that humans couldn't quite explain. It was like music made of light and thought and pure emotion all woven together. They sang Hail into death. They sang him into whatever came next. They gave him the highest honor their species could offer. Bitna was there too, recording everything. She was 48 now, and her chronicle was nearly complete. Thousands of pages, millions of words. The complete story of how everything changed. After Hail died peacefully, surrounded by light and love, Bitna sat down to write her conclusion. She thought about everything she had learned, everything she had witnessed, and she wrote, "They helped humanity once, when we faced extinction. We could have simply mourned them and moved on, grateful but helpless. Instead, we spent a century bringing them back from oblivion. We gave everything, our resources, our time, our lives, to repay a debt no one demanded we pay. And in doing so, we didn't just save one species. We changed what it meant to be alive in this galaxy. We proved that love, gratitude, and determination could overcome even death itself. The Veltari saved our bodies. We saved their souls, and together, we saved the very concept of hope." She published her chronicle. It spread across every world in the Covenant. Children learned it in schools. Adults studied it for wisdom. Other species translated it into their languages. It became more than history. It became philosophy, a guide for how to live. 50 years after Hail's death, the galaxy was unrecognizable. Peace was not universal, but it was common. Species helped each other more than they fought.